Hi, everyone. This is Christine Thompson with Baird & Warner. I have another service series video here for you. And today I have Jennifer Wadland, who works with Veros Berkshire. It is a law firm that specializes in helping people get their property taxes down. So this is going to be a good one, even for me as a realtor, because people always ask, you know, could I get my property taxes down? I'm like, I can't guarantee it. And I've heard that people have more success if they do it through an attorney. And this is why I have Jennifer here today. So Jennifer, get us all educated on this. You know, like people want to know, what are the chances of getting it down? What's required? I got so many questions for you.
Sure. So I'll start with the chances. It's very situation dependent. If you've recently purchased, that's a good time to take a look and see where things are landing. Or if you haven't touched it in a while, that's an excellent time to take a look. So what we do then is we compare how the county is valuing your property versus how it might actually be valued on the market, whether that's indicated by a recent purchase, or we can look at comparable sales and take a look at that as well. Or if you have an income producing property, we might look at the income. And then there's a property based on income as well. And then in really tricky situations or situations where we think we might get pushback from the county, we sometimes encourage an appraisal, which is it sounds scary to have an appraisal come through, but it's actually a fairly simple process and we handle it all on our end. We'll recommend an appraiser that we know, one, has success in this particular area, and two, offers a reasonable price to the client.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a pretty wide network of appraisals that we work with, and then we can best match those based on the type of property. Typically for residential properties, we don't normally need to work with an appraiser. So instead, we'll look at comparable sales in the area. Or another option we have, particularly for residential properties, is to look at the equity of the assessment, meaning we're going to take your assessment and compare it to the assessments of other homes in your area that are similar to your home and see how the county's valuing it. There's often a lot more disparity there than you would anticipate coming into this. So there's normally a decent argument that can be made on equity.
Now, would you be looking at the improvement and the lot size? Because there could be one house on a corner, it's got no backyard, it's a much smaller lot than another house, same size, and it's on half an acre, you know, way bigger lot. Yeah, so are you breaking that down?
That's certainly something we consider, particularly when we're looking at comparable sales. When you're buying a property, you're buying both the land and the improvements on it.
Right.
However, if we're looking at equity, the county is going to assign a different assessment for the land and a different assessment for the building. And typically those are based on like a per square foot basis. So you're going to see a pretty consistent per square foot value on residential land across the board in a particular neighborhood. It's the improvements where we see differences. So that's really where we look, is to lower that improvement assessment. And right, the counties don't touch the land assessment.
Yeah, well, and the thing too with houses, you know, people get caught up in price per square foot. And I'm like, well, first of all, that could include the land. You can't do that. And then secondly, you know, one house can be on a slab. The other one has a basement. That doesn't affect the square footage at all. Because in the MLS.
Yeah, so there's a number of factors that the county will look at to determine whether or not a property is comparable. So they'll look at whether or not the property has central AC, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, is the garage attached or detached, how many cars can you fit in a garage, all kinds of different information. What's the lot size? Is there a pool? Like, yeah, there's a whole list of things that they're going to look at. And so we filter by that list. For example, I was working on a townhome in Naperville that was in one of these developed areas, planned developments, that had a pond in the middle, and our townhome had a little pond, a little water view. So we needed to find other properties that also had a water view in order to make an equitable comparison, whether we were looking at the assessment or comparable sales.
Right, okay. So I got a question that clients always ask me. Let's say they get a good deal on a house. I know that's not happening right now, seller market, while we're filming this video. You guys, whoever's watching this, you might be watching 5 years from now and it might be a different market, but when it's a buyer's market and the buyer gets a really good deal on a house and they say, well, since we're buying this under market, can we get the taxes down?
Yeah, absolutely you can. So you helped me get a great deal on our house. And as a result, I was able to get the taxes lowered this year. So it really does work. To have a recent sale that's lower honestly shows what the property is going to sell for in the market.
Okay.
And there are market fluctuations, and so we'll account for that. So hypothetically, if you bought the house this year and 3 years from now it's a buyer's market, we're going to account for that. We're going to say, hey, county, clearly you remember in 2020 and 2021, the residential market was on fire. So we're not going to look at that sale. Or we can use the flip side. If we're looking at something this year, but you purchased it in 2017, 2018, when the market wasn't quite as intense for buyers, then we're going to look at the same thing. And that's something that the county might bring up to negate a purchase price, but oftentimes a purchase price, if it's within the last 3 years especially, we can see movement if a purchase price works in our favor.
Yeah. What about people that are buying, during this crazy seller market and they're like, we're way overpaying. Do we have to worry about our taxes going up because we paid over market?
Yeah, so that's actually something you do have to be concerned about. The plus side is you're not locked into that assessment for the length of the time that you own the home.
Right.
You might be stuck with that assessment for the next 3 years or so, but then after that, we can look at it. We can reevaluate the comp sales in your area. We can reevaluate the equity in your area. So it's great to start working with someone right off the bat. Our firm and other firms that provide this kind of service will monitor your assessment year after year. So it's like an automatic thing. You don't have to look at it. Somebody else is already checking and then comparing how that relates to other sales and other assessments in your area, just automatically. So you know whether or not you feel that year.
So would you know, like, if being a seller's market right now, and I'm having you do ours right now, actually, and I'm thinking, well, with the prices really getting up there right now, is it not good to question the taxes? Because would they come back and say, oh, we should raise them on you?
So they technically have that right, but it happens.
But if you do this process, the process, will that trigger them to raise the taxes?
Sure. So practically, no. Is it possible? Yes. You can get a county that comes back and tries to argue against you. If we were to encounter a situation like that as an attorney, we then withdraw. And we have an opportunity to say, like, nope, just kidding. We're not going to pursue the deal. And then the county lets us back down, and then they also back down.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So there's a safety net there, but even still, it's very unlikely that they would do that to a residential property. You're much more likely to on a commercial or industrial.
Yeah. Right. For sure. Now, what about, people that they'd like to get their taxes down, but they updated their kitchen and the interior of the house, and they did improvements inside the home that didn't require a permit?
Sure. It's really irrelevant. The county only cares about a set number of parameters, and those parameters require permits. So it's basically just the information they know is the information that we go off.
All right. Okay. Well, so, good to know.
Example, we laid new carpeting in our basement, and we repainted, and we really took the basement out of the 1970s. And the county has no idea that we did that, and they don't need to know. We have no obligation to share that information.
Right, for sure. What kind of information do you need from your clients to process, go through the process of trying to get their property taxes down? What do they have to provide to you?
So first and foremost, we need to know about any income. If you're renting the home to a tenant, or if this is an income producing property, we would need 3 years of income and expense. And then if there's been any recent transaction, any information you have on that, a closing statement, which is a document that Christine can identify for you at closing. And it's normally just like the profit and loss statement, essentially, of the transaction. That's the big one we need. A copy of the P-tax form, which is another closing document, is great as well.
Now, would that be a closing document from like 20 years ago, or if they only just recently sold or purchased?
Only if they recently did that. Yeah, so that's only if that purchase is fresh, if it's in the last 3, maybe 4 years. that's when we would need to see that. Otherwise, if you don't have any of that information, that's completely fine. We can still run with it. So what we typically do is we draft a one-page contract that discusses a contingent fee. So we don't charge our residential clients, especially our residential, unless we save them money. And that's only a percentage of those tax savings.
Right.
And then an authorization form. So we need a form that the client signs telling the county that, yes, I'm allowing this firm to file on my behalf. So it's really just those two for residential property.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't need it's not like getting a mortgage and giving your blood.
Right. No, there's not like a whole event around it. And we make sure, and I'm pretty sure other property tax firms do this as well, but we make sure that our contract is very digestible. We don't use crazy legalese firm. We're not a contracts firm.
I got the contract. It looked pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's problem with it. Yeah, it was easy. I'm like, that's it.
Appeal that are discussed there.
Yeah, it was all logical.
Yeah. So I feel like the thing I get the most questions about with our contract are the different levels of appeal. So in Cook County, we can appeal at the assessor's office, and then the Board of Review, which is a county-wide Board of Review, and then PTAB, the Property Tax Appeal Board, that's statewide. So in the collar counties and downstate counties, we just cut out that assessor level. We go directly to the Board of Review, and then if we still don't like their decision, we can go to PTAB.
Okay. How long of a process, once somebody hires you, what length of time should they be expecting to get a result, an answer, good or bad?
Sure.
Either way.
It really depends on what time of year we're contacted. So there's a very narrow window in which counties will accept appeals. And now is actually an amazing time to have this conversation because that window for appeals is just about to start opening.
Oh, okay.
Some of those windows are open in Cook County. So I can tell you those townships, those are River Forest, Riverside, Evanston, Oak Park, and Norwood Park are currently open and accepting appeals. And then none of the collar counties or downstate counties have started publishing assessments yet, but we're anticipating it within the next few weeks, that especially Kane and then DuPage normally follows quickly after, that we start seeing some publications there.
So is it typically, basically when they're giving notice of here's the bill, here are the taxes for last year, because we're in arrears in this area, people might be watching from another state, I don't know. But in the area that we're in the greater Chicago area where we're filming this, and taxes here are paid in arrears. So we get a bill saying, here are the taxes you have to pay for 2020. We're filming this in 2021. So is that around the time that you say where the gate opens, basically?
So no, not necessarily. I'm really glad you asked that. That actually is a source of a lot of confusion for clients who just aren't experienced in property taxes, which not people are.
That's why we're doing this.
So the tax bill is very different from your notice of assessment, which should actually still come to you in the mail. But that's another thing that we keep an eye on is when the assessments are going to open up.
Okay.
And then, that timeline. It's all tracked on our end.
Okay.
But no, so we can't do anything about the number on your tax bill unless the county has made a very specific type of error. They had to have made a factual error.
Okay.
So maybe they actually doubled the square footage of your house. That's a factual error. We can help you
that's
there.
a problem.
Right. Or maybe they said that you have 4 bedrooms when you really have 3, or 3 bathrooms when you have 2, something like that.
Yeah,
we can help with something along those lines if they've made a factual error in the description of your property.
Okay.
Or if you haven't gotten an exemption on your property that you should have. In some cases, you might be there. So if you haven't put the homeowner's exemption on, or the senior exemption or the senior freeze, disability, veterans, there's lots of options there. So if you don't have one of those, which you should be able to see those on your tax bill, which exemptions are paid for you. If you're noticing that there aren't any there and this is your primary residence, then that's definitely a time that we might be able to file what's called a certificate of error. But otherwise, we can't touch old tax bills. All we can work on in 2021 is the 2021 taxes that will be payable in 2022.
Right. Yes. So you can't go backwards, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can't fix a tax bill that has already come out. One other thing to note, even if we do win a reduction on an assessment, your tax bill still technically could go up from the year before, but the catch is we're keeping it from going up even more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so
Now,
sometimes the county's going to raise your assessment anyway, or the tax rate could go up. So those are things to consider too.
well, that you can't control the tax rate, I
Right,
guess by who you vote for, maybe, I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. I'm not getting into that. Sometimes people, they don't even know. I ask that my clients, do you have a homestead exemption? And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, well, I mean, how would you define that to people so they understand it?
Sure. So a homestead exemption is something you prove to the county that is your primary residence. So if you own your home and then you also own income properties, you can't get this on the income properties, even if they are residential. So this is just your home and you are the one responsible for the taxes. You have to provide
so it's your primary residence.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if someone found out, hey, I wasn't getting the homestead break on my taxes, can they appeal? Can they say, like, I get a few years back in taxes because I was paying a higher tax and I was living in the house for those 10 years as primary residence and I was never getting the tax break for homestead? What can you do?
There are some circumstances where you can file a certificate of error there. And so we would just have to talk to the client about it. You can only go back 3 years, but that can still be a decent amount.
Yeah.
And that also involves understanding how that homestead exemption works, just to keep expectations in line. The homestead exemption isn't going to like have your property tax bill or anything like that. So what it does is it takes $6,000 off of your assessed value. So your assessed value is determined by what the county thinks your market value is. So if you're outside of Cook County, anywhere in Illinois outside of Cook County, your assessed value is 33% of your market value. So if you had a $300,000 home, your assessed value is $100,000. And then if you have that homestead exemption, you can bring that down to $94,000. And then it's that number multiplied by the tax rate to figure out what your taxes are.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's great explanation. Thank you. That's an awesome explanation. I don't want to keep this too long for people because we all like to get going here. So any final thoughts that you want to share with people that are considering appealing their property taxes?
Sure. So I'd say if you're not sure where to start, just reach out to someone who does this, and we're happy to help. I know most firms, and I know for a fact our firm won't charge you for a quick review. We're not going to charge you unless we actually save you money. So it's kind of a win-win. There's no risk.
Yeah, that's great.
Out to someone for just a review at least.
Well, you guys must do a great job because you obviously can't afford to work for free all the time. So you must get good returns on your appeals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do everything from the Macy's on State Street down to my little 1,200 square foot house.
Wow. Wow. You do some big stuff.
I'm allowed to hear that, I promise. But
no problem. But that's great. But, for anybody watching this, it takes a lot of confusion out for you. And then that way, and tell me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, if you're hiring out for, someone to do that does this every day, you're probably going to have better chances at success. Would you say that's true?
That is true. Knowing what arguments you're allowed to make, compared to what you're not, the assessor's not going to listen to, or the county's not going to listen to, makes a difference. We have a lot of resources that the average individual wouldn't necessarily have access to.
Right, exactly. Cool.
Add up to making that fee a little bit more worthwhile.
Yeah, well, I figure, it's your one shot. As you said, it's limited times in the year that you can put in your appeal. And do you want to waste that shot doing it yourself, or just bring in a professional? And as Jennifer said, you're only going to get charged on what you say, a percentage on what you save. So it's a win-win,
Right.
It's not coming out of your own pocket, really. It's just coming out of the savings you made.
Right.
And then you get the savings forever, or at least for 3 years.
That's the other point is, in collar counties in particular, we only charge you for the first year we appeal. And then typically that reduction, if we win a reduction, will stay for several years. It's only reassessed every 4 years. So if we win a reduction in year one, you get to hang on to that reduction for 3 years, and we're not.
Yeah, so it pays itself. Yeah. Pays itself.
Absolutely.
And now you mentioned you guys kind of like keep the file, so you kind of check their taxes. How often do you check to see, oh, their taxes look like it's getting out of whack again, and you get in touch with the former client. How often do you guys do that?
Every single year when the county releases new assessments, we take a look.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's awesome. See, then you got someone looking out for you. You don't have to even think about it. You just hire out.
Right.
I find the value in that alone, because it's like we're all busy people, and to keep track of that every year.
Oh, I'm hiring out anything I can these days.
For 24 years, and I'm just thinking about this now. And I'm a realtor. Too busy. I'm like the classic cobbler who has the bad shoes.
Yeah, well,
but I'm so glad I called you, and you're going to take care of it for me. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to worry about it now. You're handling it.
That's right. You're doing it. Yoo-hoo! That's great. So, but Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy. I got to get you back to working on my file and everyone else's. But thank you. Yeah, and everyone that's been watching this, Jennifer's information is right here on the screen for you, so you know how to get in touch with her directly. She does not mind taking your calls. She's super, super awesome. You know, we work together personally. She's wonderful. So bend her ear if you have more questions that maybe we didn't answer during this show. And we really appreciate you watching, and feel free to share this with anybody you know that is thinking of appealing their taxes. They can get some information. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Christine.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.